Today, I've got a brand new resource for you that's going to help you do better work and have more fun when you're color grading, especially when things start to get hectic or complex, as they often do when we are doing this craft of color grading. I call this the colorist cheat sheet, and it's really 5 simple things to keep in mind during your grade to keep your grade fun and to keep your work looking really, really good. We're going to go through each of these. Let's start with number 1. Number 1 is to nail your color management. This is something we've talked about here on the channel a lot, haven't we? But I really want to emphasize it, and there's really kind of 2 aspects of this that are important. Number 1 is that we, of course, want to be working color managed. We've discussed this lots here on the channel, why we want to color manage, why it's not enough to simply start with your log image and twist knobs until things look good, the benefits in terms of speed and the quality of the image that you're going to get by embracing a color management philosophy. But the other thing that's just as important as working color managed and recognizing the importance of that is to get your color management set up completely and correctly right at the beginning of your project. If you open up a new project, you've got a new timeline, you get excited, you get in there, you start turning knobs to see what's in there. Pretty soon you are going to be married to a reproduction of your image that's not going to work when you turn on your color management, and you're going to have to start over anyway. So make sure that not only are you embracing color management, but you are setting up your color management completely and correctly right at the beginning of your project, as opposed to starting and then realizing, oh wait, I should probably go in and set up some color management, or Cullen told me that I'm going to get that much better of a result if I go and set up my color management. You really need to do this right at the very beginning. So that's number 1. Make sure you embrace color management and make sure you set it up completely and correctly. Number 2, use a well-built look. Something else we've talked about here on the channel lots, but I want to give you a quick hands-on example of why exactly that's so important and the value add that it can make to your projects. So let's go over to this shot that I'm on right now here inside of Resolve. And right now, all I have is my color management setup. I don't have any kind of macro level look or macro level creative transform. So all I'm going to do is try to avoid that, try to skip that and just see like, well, how quickly can I grade up a decent looking image here just using my primaries and using kind of my template node graph here. So I'm doing some exposure, some contrast ratio. I'm going to go over to my balance node and kind of optimize my balance like so. And I could even get a little bit fancy if I wanted to and go down after I finish balancing here and take a look at node number 4 and flip over into HSV and get a little bit of extra saturation, more kind of filmic cinematic saturation by doing that. I'm just going to kind of gain things up down there, get a little bit more color going on. And obviously lots more that I could do in this image, but for an initial kind of first crack, this is around the amount of time that I will give myself to play with an image when I'm first grading it. Don't always have much more time than this, so I got to be able to get it looking decent in about this much time. And to be honest with you, if you look at the before and then at the after, that's not bad, right? That's a value add. That's definitely moving in the right direction. Let's go ahead and grab a still of this. And what I want to do now is reset these adjustments here and now go and look at what happens if I turn on a macro level creative transform or a look over at my timeline level. Let me reset this node here like so. And if we go over to the timeline level of my node graph, I've just got a look that's composed of 2 ingredients. I've got my Fuji 3510. This is a free download if you want to grab it for yourself and play around with it. And then I'm just adding some of that cinematic saturation at kind of a global level here. Now, if we look at this shot here, it's still going to need a little bit of exposure. But by the time I just go in and make that exposure adjustment, it's already looking better than it did when I did my naive adjustment without any kind of look in place. And what's more, I'm just going to continue finessing this underneath my look here as opposed to without the look. What's more is that I've got this same sort of set of preferential characteristics working on all of my shots rather than just the one shot. So I've effectively gotten more done, gotten closer to a artful rendering of my image in less time by using a macro level creative transform than when I started grading things by hand. Of course, we still need to grade things by hand, but by having that macro level creative transform in place, you are going to be giving yourself a head start, as it were. You're going to have a better looking image faster. That's always something that's energizing, not only for us, but for our clients. And then you can focus the grading work that you're still going to do on nuancing and finessing details, as opposed to getting a reasonable looking image or an interesting looking image, getting that kind of on its feet Now your look is going to be doing that for you. So that's the next thing, is to use a well-built look, deploy it at the overall level. Remember, no matter what project you're working on, there are going to be some kinds of visual signature, some kinds of visual character that all of your shots are going to benefit from. And if you can identify those things and get them implemented at a macro level, that's going to give you that much better of a foundation for color grading. It's going to make you faster. It's going to make the work look better. And a look is similar to your color management in that this is something you can refine and tweak as you go along, but you really want to have it in place right at the very beginning because it's going to change your grading decisions. So you don't want to start with doing a bunch of freehand grading only to go, oh, wait, maybe I should add a look in there, because you're really going to have to either redo or rethink a lot of the color grading work that you've already done. So number 2 is to use a well-built look. And again, I'll emphasize, make sure you put that in at the very beginning of your process, just like you do with your color management. So you're sort of stacking things up. You color manage, you implement your look, and then you begin grading because you've got a fantastic foundation to start making things look really, really good, really, really fast. That's number 2. Let's take a look at number 3. Number 3, contrast over color. This is one that is so helpful when you are in the weeds and you're struggling to match shots, or when you're getting feedback that you don't quite know how to implement. Always, always remember, when we are color grading in any situation, even if the conversation is about like, oh, the match between these shots, the colors don't quite feel right. So often when we have an itch or something that's bothering us, whether that's a client giving us a piece of feedback or something that's bothering us kind of internally as the colorist, so often the root cause of that is to do with contrast rather than color. And I'll put it to you this way, the simple prescription. It is possible to get a really strong looking grade and have your balance be a little bit off in a shot here or there. The same cannot be said of contrast. It is not possible to put up a really great looking color grade with contrast that isn't working. So prioritize contrast. That's where our eyes are more sensitive. That's where you are going to make better value adds. That's where you are going to better create flow from shot A to B to C. So even when it feels like it might be a color thing, even when you recognize I'm going to have to do something about the colors in this image, if you focus on nailing your contrast first, you are going to get further faster. And again, kind of embrace this goal that we have with the colorist cheat sheet, which is to do better work more quickly and to have more fun, right? So that's number 3. Is we really want to embrace contrast over color and not get lost with trying to perfect our color when meanwhile our contrast really hasn't been dialed in yet. Let's take a look at number 4. Number 4, do I need to add something or remove something? This is one of my absolute favorites. And one of the reasons it's my favorite is because when we're working with clients, when we're working with collaborators, the feedback that we get is almost always going to be framed in the context of, well, now that we have this, let's add that. And then let's add that. And then let's add that. And that's okay. That's what we're doing in color grading, is we're building and shaping and refining and iterating. That's a natural part of the process. But this is such a powerful question to ask. If you can just reflexively, instinctively, the moment someone says, hey, can we go in and add that to the shot? Just take a 2-second pause and look at your node graph and go, is this something that I need to add a node for or add an adjustment for? Or is there something happening in my node tree that I could get rid of or adjust in order to address this node? And by thinking about that question and operating in that sort of conservative, more reductive mode, you're going to have a simpler node graph. You're going to be able to make that adjustment a lot more quickly, right? Because if it is indeed something that you just need to tune or even remove, that's faster than adding a new adjustment, right? So same thing, it's really going to kind of energize and simplify and empower your color grading. So this is a great question to ask. The answer is not going to be always that you need to remove something. Sometimes you indeed do need to add a new adjustment, but you're going to be amazed how often when you initially have the impulse to add something in, or you get the note that we need a new power window or we need a contrast increase or whatever it is, how often there is something else in your node graph that if you back it off or get rid of it completely, that actually addresses the note just as well or better than adding in something new. So just get in the habit of asking yourself that question whenever you have an impulse yourself creatively, or when you get a piece of feedback from a collaborator. Just take that split second to be like, wait, do I need to add something, or could I remove something and get just as good or maybe even better of a result? That's number 4. Finally, number 5 in the colorist cheat sheet, don't get stuck. This one is so important, and it's not just important for you as the colorist, it's important for the people who you're working with. There is nothing that is less fun and less energizing and more demoralizing than to be stuck on a shot for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. We're still working on it, and now nobody can tell if we're even better than where we started. It's the worst feeling in color grading. It's something to be avoided at all costs. So I'm going to give you a really simple rule of thumb. Even if you feel like you have plenty of time and you're not under a hard deadline, give yourself 60 seconds, certainly no more than 90 seconds. And if you're not able to accomplish something that you want to in that period of time, it's okay. Put a pin in it. If you're working with someone, let them know you're going to put a pin in it. You're going to drop a marker, make a note. What else needs to happen here? And you will be absolutely amazed at how energized your process will become if you drop that pin in it, drop that marker, move on to the next shot, continue grading, and by the time you circle back around to that problem area of that problem shot, it's most of the time going to be crystal clear to you what needs to happen. Or here's another thing that happens all the time when you take this approach. You're going to come back and you're going to go, gosh, I actually think it looks pretty good. I'm not sure we need that thing that we were fixating on the last time we were looking at the shot. So trust me, I know it sounds weird, and it's going to take some practice, because when you're in it and you're focused on solving a problem, it can almost feel painful to peel yourself away from it and say, we're not going to work on that any further right now. But you are going to be amazed at how much better your work is and how much more fun it is to do the work when you refuse to allow yourself to get stuck on a problem. If you can't solve the problem, you're not sure where it needs to go, you're really not sure whether you are making an improvement or just making things more complicated, do yourself a favor and say, I'm not going to get stuck. Put a pin in it, move on, come back to it with fresh eyes, and you'll be amazed how often the problem solves itself, or you're able to solve it really quickly because you are looking at it with fresh eyes and you can tell exactly what's needed. So there you go. That's the colorist cheat sheet. If you can keep those 5 things in mind, this is a really, really good guide, a really good cheat sheet to keeping things fun, keeping things energized, keeping things moving quickly when you're color grading. These are the things that it took me, honestly, years to figure out in my own color grading practice. And when I'm smart enough to remember to keep them in mind, I always find that my process goes better than when I overlook one or more of the tips here in the colorist cheat sheet.